So having set the context for the discussion, and Ellie and Anne and Eleanor, thank you so much for your inspiring and helpful remarks. It is a hopeful moment, although there are many sort of minefields along the way that we need to be careful of. But I think this does set the context for our opening plenary. And we want to think through together how we can seize the opportunities of this transformative moment. We have an administration in Washington, as several of us have said, with big ideas that they're actively working to implement. The American public seems open to thinking about society, the economy, and change in ways they've never been thinking about this before. But at the same time, the economy is in a steep decline, which means it's exacerbating historic inequalities, but also creating new inequalities and marginalizations, which we're going to hear about during this plenary. The question that we're posing is, how do we seize the moment to create a new social contract based on social justice, which we say equality, inclusion, and security. These are very important pegs of it. And what kinds of alliances do we need to affect these changes? For us, we've invited groups to come and speak today with whom we hope we can be developing alliances. I think it's very important that we find new ways to work together. But also, how do we bring to this new administration our knowledge of the deep inequalities and great gaps in opportunity that exist among the populations and groups that we're all working with? And how do we bring to their attention the potential for strategic interventions and creative solutions that some of us working more in the trenches see? We have a dream team here to help us sort this out and to think in innovative ways. And I'm just going to, we have bios of everyone in the program, but let me just quickly go down the group here. First, to my left, we have Heather Boushey, a senior economist at the Center for American Progress. Heather is a research affiliate with the National Poverty Center at the Gerald R. Ford School for Public Policy, a well-known author, someone that everyone wants to be on their program. We then have Iracema Garza, who is the relatively new president of Legal Momentum. I'm very pleased to say one of the member centers of the council, a very important women's rights advocacy organization. Iracema herself is a civil rights lawyer, has done a lot of work in public space, and was director of the U.S. Department of Labor Women's Bureau under President Clinton. We have Alan Jenkins, who is the executive director of the Opportunity Agenda, an organization that works to build national support for expanding opportunities for all. He was previously director of human rights at the Ford Foundation, just has a wealth of knowledge to bring to us today. We then have Lisa Mensah, an expert in using financial tools to improve the economic security of the working poor. Lisa is executive director of the Aspen Institute Initiative on Financial Security, and they have some very interesting tools that Lisa will tell us about. And then we have Rinku Sen. Rinku. I have to, Rinku Sen is, I've messed up all my pages here, Rinku.
It's really okay. I can do a quick little.
You can fill in the blank there. So the way, thank you very much, Rinku.
Awesome.
How could I have messed my pages up, and how could I have not have memorized your how could I have not memorized your organization there? So my apologies. But the way we're going to do this is, they're all doing such important, interesting work, but we want this to be an interactive dialogue with all of you. So we have asked them in 3 minutes to talk about a strategic issue that they see is critically important that their organizations are working on, and some of the strategies that they're thinking about to address those situations. And we're just going to move right down the line. We're going to start with Heather and move all the way down. Okay. So Heather Boushey.
Tick-tock, tick-tock. Thank you so much Linda, for your fantastic introductions, and for all the comments of the prior speakers. This just appears to be a fantastic event. Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the word trauma. And I want to pick up on something that Ellie talked about, which is those white supremacists out there. So I'm a labor economist. I spend a big part of my work week going through the data and trying to understand how this recession is playing out, who is it hurting, what is the role of the stimulus package, what does government need to do, and what are the next steps. There are a couple of things that jump out at me each time I look at this data. One is that the vast majority of jobs that have been lost so far have been lost by men, and as far as I can tell, there appears to be no end in sight to that. Second, it is the case that for workers 55 years and older, they are experiencing unemployment rates that are at post-World War II historic highs. It is also the case that that is almost true for white men. Their unemployment rate is just a couple tenths of a % lower than the peaks that it reached during the early 1980s. For no other demographic group is unemployment is close to where it peaked in the early 1980s. So for African Americans, for Hispanics, unemployment rates are high. They continue to be higher than for white workers. But in terms of experiencing a sharp, blunt trauma, we are seeing something happening among white men that, quite frankly, scares me. And it scares me because of some of the things that we've seen happen over, it appears today and in recent weeks. Because you've got large populations who aren't used to the kind of pain that minority groups have always felt, for whom this is a new experience, and for whom we don't have the kinds of organizing or social supports that are there to help them and to direct that anger and that frustration. What they have is being unemployed and watching Fox News, right? Which is not necessarily a well, dare I say, a positive influence, perhaps, on many of them. So what I see as I look at this recession is, I think in many ways it's a game changer, because we have not experienced anything like this. We've not experienced a recession that has hit so many broad, diverse groups. It's hitting different kinds of groups that haven't been hit as hard before, and I think the potential for social dislocation from that is quite enormous, and is different than things that we've experienced before. I think it also presents enormous, there's challenges, but I think it also presents enormous opportunities to help rebuild a progressive coalition that is far more inclusive than it has been in recent decades. But that requires that we focus on not just the way it's always been, but the reality of who's hurting now and what the political opportunities are now in terms of organizing efforts. And I'm sure with that I've used up my 3 minutes, so I will stop and pass it along, and hopefully we can come back to these issues.